Welcome back, Grappling fans. First show in what feels like a very long time. We are all back in the studio for another episode of the Grappling Bulletin podcast. And there's so much to talk about because it's been about 3 weeks or so since we last did a show. And of course, lots happened since then. The global grappling community has continued to throw new developments our way. And I think none bigger than the announcement, of course, that we have Who's Number One coming up on March 25th. Tezos Who's Number One, Mikey Musumeci versus Gio Martinez in the main event. Chase, that's a wild one to come back to, right?
Yeah, we're definitely fired up. As you mentioned, it's been a few weeks and so much has happened, but all eyes are looking ahead to WNO, and Mikey versus Gio is the grudge match, right? There's a lot riding for both guys, much more than a simple W. I think there's pride and honor on the line, let's say.
Oh, a lot of pride. Corey's in the back. He's joining us today, as always. But Corey, we're not going to talk too much about the events over the last couple of weeks, right? Even though there's still some things to dissect from the ADCC trials in South America, and I'm sure there's things to digest from the European Championships in Italy. But the whole kind of point of today is there's a lot that happened very recently over the last weekend or so, but we really want to look forward to some of these juicy matches we've got on Who's Number One, right?
Yeah, and none bigger, I think, than what is the third match down here. Nicky Ryan versus Jacob Couch, right? Because we haven't seen Nicky Ryan in 8 months. All the way back in July at the Road to ADCC against Dante Leon was the last time we saw him. So there's a lot to talk about with Nicky Ryan here.
Yes, there is. There really is. And you're right. The 8-month layoff that Nicky Ryan had to endure was because of the result of an injured knee, which he injured mid-match against Dante Leon in July in an ADCC rules match. It was Road to ADCC. It was the event right here in Austin, Texas that we were working at. And I don't know about you, Chase, but I remember seeing something happen in the match. And there was like a wrestling exchange, and Nicky walked across the mat, and I just knew something was off. Remember?
Yeah, you're correct. There was a moment where there was a wrestling exchange on the corners. They reset in the middle, and during that reset, everyone was in the room saw Nicky kind of limping over. And the rest of the match was very different, right? We had Nicky immediately set the guard, play off of his back, and defend well enough, with half a leg.
Yeah.
So, and ended up taking the win there by decision.
A pretty convincing win, actually. I mean, he looked great earlier in the match and managed to battle through that injury to take a win against a very tough guy in Dante. But we didn't know how serious the injury was until much later, right?
I mean, later that evening, we knew when he got carted off in a hotel cart, right? Was no longer walking. We found out shortly thereafter that it was what was it, an ACL or MCL?
Meniscus, I believe.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
But as somebody who's been under the knife in this last year or so, you can probably sympathize with somebody like Nicky, who had to basically, he was off the mat for months, and of course, this is his first match in what's going to be 251 days.
Yeah.
From the time of his last match until his match with Jacob Couch on March 25th, it's going to be 251 days. That's brutal, right?
It has to be as a professional athlete, right? I train for my own enjoyment. It's not what I do to make a living. For someone that's in their prime, that's sidelined for such a long time, obviously it has to be grueling and mentally very, very tough. So I'm very happy for Nicky to have him back. But he's got a tough opponent in Jacob Couch. Here we have some highlights playing of the 3 matches we saw from Nicky in 2021. And what we noticed was an increased emphasis on wrestling, right? So here we have PJ Barch versus Nicky. PJ in the purple rash guard there hunting for the Kimura trap. Nicky countering nicely in a moment. But we noticed a few key elements, right? The wrestling and the body lock passing. Those were 2 of Nicky's latest sort of inventions. That
Wrestling up from the seated guard. Apparently, Nicky is... all his training partners and many people who are very, very dialed into the kind of the technical developments in jiu-jitsu, they're saying that Nicky's wrestling up is some of the best out there. And he won 3 very good matches in quick succession. He beat PJ Barch, split decision. That was a very tough match against a very tough opponent. He won a very convincing decision, much more dominant performance against Gabriel Almeida in his second match of 2021, and then he had, of course, that great match with Dante Leon where he unfortunately injured his knee. But I think that people who maybe have been following Nicky's career for a long time will remember the 145-pound version of Nicky Ryan, who used to go out and savagely leg lock everybody. But he's a very different Nicky Ryan nowadays. Technically, he has evolved. Physically, he has evolved. But there have been a lot of changes to Ryan's personal circumstances since his last match. And I think this is what we want to talk about a little today, right? Because number one, since his last match, he is no longer training with John Danaher or his brother Gordon Ryan. This will be his first match representing B Team, of which he is a founding member. And there is a big question, Corey, maybe you want to jump in on this one first, is that now he's no longer got John coaching him. How will he fare without the guidance of his longtime teacher and coach?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure, in that we've always seen John coaching Nicky or Gordon coaching Nicky. Now I imagine we'll have either Nicky Rod or Craig Jones in his corner, and I don't think it'll be much different in that the guys from the former DDS squad have always coached by kind of the same cadence and the same cues. And we've seen Nicky coaching himself and kind of using the same rhythm and the same cues. So I don't know how much the coaching will necessarily matter, but the training will definitely have a big impact. And the lead up to this, I can say for sure, I've been to the B Team. They do a lot of wrestling training, a lot of wrestling up training. So I think they'll be working on exactly what we have expected to see from Nicky Ryan in the last, in the time leading up to his injury.
It's an interesting segue. Let's talk about the B Team. Let's talk about the room there. So, of course, the B Team has become one of the most popular destinations for no-gi grapplers coming to Austin, right? The gym is not 100% private. It's by application only. And it's the kind of place where the general public aren't just able to walk in and train, but they do have a pretty sizable team now. They've told us that, every mat is like 50, every training session, there are about 50 to 60 people on the mat, that they have about 150 drop-ins every week. There's no shortage of bodies to work with, right? And I think it's pretty obvious for anybody who's been to B Team, this is a room full of highly motivated competitors, right?
Yeah, actually, shout out to Yusuf and Sally, a couple guys I met just over the course of my time in Austin, been in coffee shops and stuff. But a lot of people are moving here to train at B Team, and I think that says a lot about the kind of dedication involved. Of course, they have standout names that are sort of the coaches, if you want to call it, the founding members. Nicky Rod, we have Isaac Mitchell in the mix there, as well as, of course, Craig Jones. So
Ethan Krellinston, Damian Anderson. Yeah, there's no shortage of bodies to work with, right? And I think that these are all guys who they were all produced from the same factory, right? They're all on the same wavelength, technically speaking, much like Corey mentioned, even the way that they talk and they think about jiu-jitsu, they're all very much on the same wavelength. But when you're coming up through the ranks, there's maybe less expectations on you. But then you're thrown out there in the world to kind of find your own way. And Nicky is still young, right? He's still in his early 20s. And now he finds himself in a very different position where he had in the past somebody thinking about him and thinking, okay, this is the strategy you're going to follow. This is the game you're going to play. This is what you're going to do in every training session. You have to think now he's going to have to shoulder a lot of that responsibility on by himself, right?
Well, you mentioned expectations a moment ago, and I think if anybody's had high expectations placed upon them, it is Nicky Ryan. You're calling him the prodigy, the next big thing since he was 14 years old.
Yeah.
And always also saying that hasn't quite delivered. Even though he's put in some phenomenal work throughout his career, that has been something hanging over his head a little bit. And
maybe the hype was a little too much.
Well, I don't know what it was, but I know what the results are. And so I think, this could go two ways, where maybe this is a little bit of a relief for Nicky. He's in control of his own destiny, like you said. He's got he's more in control of his own destiny than maybe he was before. I don't know exactly the circumstances I want to say, but I think it could be very favorable for him to sort of say, okay, this is my time. I'm running the show now, as opposed to maybe before he felt like he was doing what he had to. So I don't know. It's a lot of speculation in this conversation, but it is worth talking about because it is so much different than it was before.
These are key questions. These are key questions that we have to talk about, when somebody's coming back off an 8-month layoff due to injury, but then has had so many life changes in that time as well. No longer training with John, no longer training with Gordon, training with a different group of people, a different environment, a different city, different state. So much has happened. And of course, he is still only 20 years of age. It's like you said, we've been following him for 5-6 years at this point, since he was a very, very young man. And he's still very much in the early stages of his career. So it's interesting to see where things go from here. But I think the final question, and this is something I'm sure that you can sympathize with once again, is how is the knee? Because when you suffer a catastrophic injury, when you suffer a severe injury that requires surgery, there can be a certain psychological hurdle to overcome to even get back on the mat, let alone prepare with the kind of intensity required for a match, right?
Too true. And I think we'll learn a lot when we go visit the B team later this week. We're going to do some filming, meet with Nicky, interviews, all that, and I'm sure we'll see as well as hear from him how that's going. There's definitely going to be another psychological jump when it comes to performing in competition, right? Like going back on the mats, training with people you trust, an environment that's very structured potentially, to going against someone that wants to win for money against you and prestige is entirely different, right? So I think there will be some of that, and I'm very interested to see how Nicky performs. Corey, what do you think about this whole thing?
I wonder, if anything, how much that requires Nicky to adjust his style, at least in the beginnings of the comeback, right? Because, you talk about somebody who's gotten good at wrestling and wrestling up, which can, I imagine, put a lot of strain on your legs, or make Nicky put a lot more faith in his legs than maybe he'd like to at this early stage. So wondering if we'll see a shift in strategy, or if we'll see him be a little tentative. But I imagine he's working that right now, trying to make sure that he is sure on his knee and that it's not going to be an issue.
Not to mention he's going against Jacob Couch, who is a leg locker.
Locker. I mean, I don't imagine the knee being an issue in a leg lock shootout. I think even with Couch's strategy and his preferred attacks, so well known, great close guard, fantastic leg lock game, it would be a bold move to go head to head with Nicky Ryan in a leg lock exchange. But I wanted to ask you, Corey, because I know that you've been in that gym. Now we're going to be there Wednesday. We're going to I think you're going down on Wednesday, right? We're going to watch him train.
That's the plan.
There are plenty of videos out floating around on the internet of Nicky training at the moment, but Corey, I believe that you've actually got some first-hand experience. You've been to the B team, you've been on the mat, and I believe you've even hands-on with Mr. Ryan himself, right? So tell us, what's that like?
Yeah, and I think the last time I got a chance to train with Nicky Ryan was Christmas Day. He was, of course, on the mat bright and early. I was, I think, probably the warm-up round, but I got some first-hand experience of his wrestling, and yeah, his change of pace, his level change, his hand speed, and his really just constant off balancing is the best wrestling I've ever felt, hands down.
So this is 2 months ago, and you said that he was already wrestling confidently, competently. Sounds like it was a bit of a handful, actually, but this was 2 full months ago. So who knows what progress he's made in that time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw him after warming up with me. I saw him really working his wrestling with some of the maybe higher level guys in there.
And how did that go?
Equally detrimental to his opponents.
We do have some training footage of that already.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be collecting more, but if you guys navigate to the FloGrappling training page, you can see him working some wrestling and what they do over there. Apparently, it's very much a standard to do a serious amount of work on the feet, whether it's the warm-up for the class or just throughout the day. It's an emphasis, of course. It's an ADCC year, so that's something they're going to be focusing on.
Well, they will face off. Nicky Ryan versus Jacob the Hillbilly Hammer Couch will face off on March 25th. Tezos Who's Number One. And the co-main event is coming up next. We're going to talk about this now because I'm super excited for this. The next match we're going to talk about that's on March 25th is Mica Galvao versus Dante Leon. That is a wild match. I'm so excited for this match because, of course, Mica Galvao is a special talent. Very special.
Let's just run this highlight. It's a long one, but I want you people to see this. If you have not caught Mica's trials performance, one of so many throughout his career, then you're missing out.
This is what I was going to say because, it is one thing to say that somebody is good at jiu-jitsu. It's another thing to just sit back and watch them shred 5 opponents in a row, all via submission. No match taking longer than about 2 minutes to qualify for the upcoming ADCC World Championships. I mean, Mica, I saw him firsthand. I was mat side for this. This was the first South American trials in the south of Brazil. And he just stormed through the opposition. Now, people are expecting big things when he goes head-to-head with Dante Leon. But before we get too much into breaking down that particular match, let's talk about Mica's jiu-jitsu, because it's just so sharp.
I mean, it's just so creative. We saw earlier from that arm lock from the coyote guard, leaping over the top, defying gravity, more or less. That should give you some indication of what he's capable of. But he really just is so dynamic, right? I mean, he can do basically anything he wants to. I don't know what else to say. He's so fun to watch, so creative, and he's a finisher. He's always looking for his time, total time allotted at ADCC trials was, like you said, under 3 minutes for 5 matches. That should tell you what he's capable of against very stiff competition. Corey, what stands out about Mica's game to you?
It appears to me that he does things that most people not only don't expect, but have never seen before. On autopilot. The way he moves is so creative, but he doesn't take a minute to think about it. He just moves forward and kind of knows that what he's looking for will be there, or he's willing to take risks, because for him, and I think for a lot of the grapplers of his generation, they're not risks. They're just kind of what you've grown up with.
I watched Mica drill at our very first WNO when we had gi matches.
Oh, yeah.
Mica was out for that, and it was the first time I got to see him in person. And he was just drilling a couple days before the event. Just a machine, right? Was doing various berimbolo drills, matrix bat take stuff, all back attacks.
I think he was 16 at the time
and
as
over.
well, right?
And I mean,
maybe 15.
15, but
Yeah.
just working like a professional athlete was. Not
Right.
talking, no chit-chat, just boom, rep, doing 25 reps and switching and right back to it. It was pretty insane.
Oh, well, that obviously speaks a lot to the discipline that he's developed training under his father, Mica Galvao, as part of the fight sports team there in Manaus, alongside his training partners and fellow soon-to-be ADCC competitors, Fabricio Andre, Diogo Hayes, and more. And I think that a really important fact to note here is the fact that Mica Galvao, 18 years of age, has been training since he was about 4, apparently. That's what we've been told. So think about it, 14 years of mat time. Now, they say it takes about 10 years to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? And these teenagers, 17, 18 years of age, are coming into the early stages of the professional career with more accumulated mat time than it generally takes to get a black belt. So what level are these guys at, really? And I think what you just mentioned there, Corey, is about the creativity in the attacks and the sort of the lack of thought necessary to execute these incredible techniques, for me, hints to the next evolution in jiu-jitsu. Because we often look to specific techniques in jiu-jitsu, right? Mm-hmm. What's the next big trend? What's the next big technique? What's the next submission? What's the next guard? What's the next thing that people are going to focus on? And I feel that a big trend in jiu-jitsu at the moment, and I'm talking about people such as Mica Galvao, the Ruotolo brothers, Cole Abate, and all these amazing athletes who are 20 years of age or younger. Their ability to perform under pressure and with such incredibly flawless technique, for me, is the next evolution. I think that the next evolution is going to be this wave of teenage athletes coming in and seriously disrupting the status quo, because these guys cannot be taken lightly, even though they're younger, right?
Certainly, I think it's absolutely true. And I think it, not that you're saying this, but just to be clear, that it's not just that they're starting young and absorbing this information while they're growing as a human being, but also the pedagogy of jiu-jitsu's improved so much in the last 10 years as well. I mean, just the amount of information out there is wild. And so not only are these coaches incorporating the latest jiu-jitsu techniques and evolutions there and strategies, but I feel like we're learning from other sports that are more established, and you're seeing things like film and tape study become normal for almost all major teams. You have...
And just training like professionals.
Exactly.
Right? Because you're right. The 10 to 14 years on the mat isn't a guarantee for success, but 10 years of training as a professional.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different matter.
That's different. And then you see people like Mica come out to the scene. So, yeah, it's exciting times. I feel like he's the beginning of the next generation, and there'll be more like him 5 years from now or so. But at the moment, he seems to be the next big deal. So.
Let's talk a little bit about Dante then, because Dante is coming into this with a lot more experience. Now Dante has already competed at ADCC, right? He made his way into the third place match of the 2019 ADCC World Championships. You're seeing some standout moments from Dante here, and we know what to expect every time Dante Leon gets on the mat. Hardcore wrestling, head down, go forward style, looking for the submission, excellent technical guard work, amazing scrambles, powerful submission attacks. He's got a little bit of everything. They have to say, Corey, that sounds a lot like Mica Galvao.
It absolutely does, in that there is no kind of brake pedal for either of these guys, right? They're forward, they take chances, and they're willing to get after it. And what I think gives Dante the biggest edge in this match is that he's not going to come in scared of Mica Galvao, and Mica tends to do well when people hesitate a little bit. Dante's going to go forward, and the pace that he should be able to put on Mica will give him an edge.
So let's talk about what that match looks like. You've got Mica Galvao, teenage sensation, going up against, at this point, a veteran Dante Leon, 26 years of age. Now, technically, we can say that they're very similar. But what does it go down like under Who's Number One rules? How does that match play out, you think?
I definitely assume we're going to see some wrestling. You know, Dante is absolutely confident in his work on the feet, and Mica has shown to be quite talented there as well, quite adept. So I think they're going to explore that, and I know there's going to be a scramble. So it's tough. It's tough to call who comes out on top of that. But I want to point out that Gordon Ryan made an interesting post right after, I think it was the first Brazilian trials, about how the level of jiu-jitsu in Brazil isn't as good and that the trials winners on the whole wouldn't do as well at the North American trials. Well, we have a chance to kind of see that theory tested here against Mica Galvao versus someone like Dante Leon.
Right.
Dante, of course, as we mentioned, ADCC experience, has a win over Lucas Lepri, and a great representative of jiu-jitsu here in North America from Canada, but also spending a lot of time in the States.
Yeah, Dante never won trials, never needed to. Got the invite based on his no-gi success leading into that tournament. And you're right. I think that even though this is a submission-only match, this is a 15-minute Who's Number One rules match. This is not an ADCC rules match. So the strategy could be a little different, but it takes a certain special caliber of athlete to reach that point, right, in the ADCC championships. And Dante Leon showed that he has that. Now, any questions about how Mica stacks up against those kind of athletes could be answered at this match, right?
I think so. I think also worth noting, too, that Dante started quite young. I remember there's a photo floating around of him and Chandra Rivera when Dante's like a yellow belt. Yeah. He was doing, I think, private lessons with Cobrinha at the same time. So Dante also committed very young in life to really pursuing his dreams of becoming a professional jiu-jitsu athlete. And so it is, even if it is a little bit of a generational clash, kind of weird to say that when Dante is just 26. But he's also been with a similar approach, right? Maybe not quite the same as Mica, because it was under the guidance of his own father and probably every single day his entire life, where Dante may have had some, different kind of things breaking that up. I do think it's about as close as you can get to being similar framework.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. For me, it's one of my favorite matches on the upcoming card. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other matches a little later in today's show, but that's kind of what we can expect. But I think it's really important that we hear from Mica, because we were able to catch up with him, of course, when we were in Brazil. And just after his success winning the ADCC trials, we sat down with him, and Michael got to ask him about this upcoming match. So let's hear what Mica has to say.
Very tough guy. Actually, I was supposed to fight Dante, I think, on GP. We tried to catch up on this fight a few times, and we couldn't. But yeah, I'm very excited to fight him. I've seen him fighting with like very high-level guys. I've seen him doing many good matches, and I can expect something else, like I just can expect for him a very good matchup.
This is going to be another good test for you for ADCC, right? Because you just won one of the toughest trials. The trials here in Brazil are probably the toughest trials.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be going up against a guy who made the semis last time, so it's another test for ADCC for you, right?
Exactly. It's going to be pretty good, actually. Like, a very good training. Even, like, winning or losing, of course, we always want to win, but it's going to be a very good experience for me on total.
And the other thing that always stands out to me about Mica Galvao, and I've met him so many times now, I've lost count, but the one thing that always just shocks me is his maturity and his poise. He's just a professional through and through, right?
Also just a nice guy. You know, he's super friendly, doesn't have any ill will towards his fellow competitors, just loves to go out there and scrap and show off the beauty of jiu-jitsu. So I'm a big Mica fan, also a big Dante fan. I think they're going to really deliver this WNO coming up.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So that is two of the biggest matches on the next Who's Number One event coming up. Well, let's look back for a moment. Let's do some results recapping, okay? Because there were a few events over the weekend, and unfortunately, we can't recap everything that happened since the last Grappling Bulletin podcast. That was a lot of jiu-jitsu right there. But let's just take a quick look at some of the notable results from the last weekend. Fight to win 195. Play the clip because Lucas Pinheiro was able to take a decision win against Esteban Martinez. And to be honest, when you look at this performance, I am very impressed indeed with Lucas Pinheiro's extremely heavy top game and his control. Not many people are able to shut down Esteban Martinez like this. And Lucas Pinheiro, man, we know firsthand just how good he is. But watching him put the pressure on Esteban like this, that's a real statement.
100%. Yeah, Lucas, I've had the pleasure of training with him, and incredible top game. Really, really powerful passing. You see it in action here. And he's one of the most dominant roosterweights out there today. Of course, almost nearly impossible to sub Esteban. Worth noting, by the way, Esteban, the Giant Slayer, game as always, competed in Miami earlier that morning, took home gold at IBJJF Open there, and then flew to New Mexico same day to take this match with Lucas Pinheiro. So huge shout out to the Giant Slayer for just being a total badass and just living the lifestyle, really going for it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm not taking anything away from Lucas Pinheiro's window because his top game and his control were absolutely picture perfect. And the match is a great study in a very patient, very controlled passing game against a very wily, very physical opponent. The match is on FloGrappling.com. Make sure to go check it out. Finishers had an event over the weekend, and this was a qualifying event for the upcoming Emerald City Invitational. Corey, take it away. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the event was and who emerged the winner? Yeah,
so it was hosted by Finishers Open. It was the qualifier for the Emerald City Invitational 155-pound bracket. Loaded division. The winner, Kieran Kachuk, had to go through 5 rounds. Kieran has been on the up and up for the last year and a half or so, but really stood out in this division. He ended up beating Jordan Hawley in the final with a triangle in 31 seconds.
Wow.
And that puts him into the Emerald City Invitational card on March 12th, which right now features Keith Ricorian, Gabriel Souza, Gianni Grippo, John Calistine, Pedro Serrano, Adam Benayoun, and Josh Cisneros. So absolutely loaded card.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's coming up March 12th, you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. Emerald City, always a lot of fun. They actually scaled the tournament down from, it was 16 men in the past. It's going to be an 8-man tournament this time around. And I'm particularly excited by the fact that Kachuk is going to enter that lineup because I've always enjoyed watching him compete. He's very exciting.
Yeah, really aggressive athlete, great guard, dangerous triangles, and has been doing really well the last couple of years. I feel like he's been steadily on the rise. So this could be a great opportunity for him at Emerald City. Looking
forward to that. Grapple Fest had an event in Liverpool, England over the weekend, and quite a unique kind of setup. It wasn't the entire card, but it featured a number of matches that pitted the Daisy Fresh team, Pedigo Submission Fighting, up against some of Europe's top grapplers. It was billed as Daisy Fresh versus Europe. And some of the most notable results. Well, Mikey Musumeci went out there and won with an ankle lock. Very, very savage, very tight ankle lock in about 90 seconds, I want to say. Kendall Rusing had an open weight match against always game Fionn Davis, and Fionn going up against Kendall, who competes in the super heavyweight division. I believe that Fionn is sort of usually featherweight lightweight, right? So there's a huge size disparity between the two, but you know, such a gamer, always going forward. And Dante Leon was able to score a win as well. Any other notable results we should know about from that, Corey?
John Hansen, the first North American Trials winner, won by rear naked choke. Jacob Couch won a decision. Michael Pixley from last who's number one won via guillotine. And Jacob Brooks, Spatchy, by Darce choke.
Hell yeah. There you go. Good day for the Daisy Fresh, boys.
Showing up, showing out. Well done.
One more event to recap quickly was the EBI 19 qualifying event. Much like finishers with Emerald City, this was a tournament held to fill a vacant spot at the upcoming EBI 19 170-pound tournament. And I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Omer Emanuele.
Just got to commit.
Just going to have to go with it. But Omer won by winning 3 tough matches. What stood out about the performance, please, Corey?
He is a leg lock heavy grappler. A lot of control in those leg entanglement positions, and that really put him over the top. That puts him into the 60-man bracket, which is, I believe, on March 13th, so a day after Emerald City.
Wow, there we go. That's going to be a lot of fun. Representing Israel as well as Omer, all the way over here to compete in the EBI rules event. But representing Checkmat, I believe, as well. Is that correct?
That's right.
There you go. Yeah, some strong jiu-jitsu in Israel, actually. Love to see them guys making sort of waves on the world scene now as well, actually. It's always been a strong domestic scene, but now we're actually seeing some of those athletes making their way out into the world and doing pretty well. Cool. Well, let's talk about some grappling news, shall we? Because there's some stories sort of coming up and some things that the community should know. And probably one of those is about the ADCC trials in Australia. So we can confirm that the ADCC trials, the Asia and Oceania trials that were scheduled for Singapore have been cancelled. Not postponed, cancelled. There will only be one qualifying event for Asian and Oceanic. That doesn't sound right, but athletes from Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, etc., etc. But this event will take place in Sydney, and it's going to go down on June 19th. So this is going to be the only qualifying event, and it's going to be for both men and women.
Don't miss it if you're out there in Oceania. Yeah, that's important to know.
It's been a little bit tricky down there. There's been a lot of on and off, right? The events have kind of been on, cancelled due to COVID restrictions mostly, and then who knows what else, travel restrictions and so on, problems getting in and out of the country. I do believe that the borders for Australia are open again, though, so international competitors from around the region should be able to go to Sydney and compete for this, because ADCC is big, man. People don't want to miss that, right?
Should be pretty interesting, right? Whenever not whenever, but in the past when trials have been kind of discombobulated like this, it always makes for that one event to be a bit of a super trials because they know it's their only shot. So
yeah, exactly. Combining two into one in effect. We're expecting there to be a heavy Australian presence at the trials in Sydney, of course, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see grapplers from around Asia making their way down there for this, because this is ADCC, man. It only comes around every 2 years, right? So you got to take that shot when it comes.
That's true.
Cool.
June 19th.
June 19th. Don't miss that one. Some really shocking news and some really tragic news that came out of the UK over the last week or so is about the British black belt Samantha Cook, who a European champion, IBJJF European champion in 2019 as a black belt, revealed that she's been diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And this was a really shocking story. That she said that she went to the hospital complaining of ongoing sort of itchiness in the skin and also some breathing problems that she thought were a kind of a hangover from COVID, which she'd had late last year. And tests revealed that she had cancerous lumps in her neck and her chest, and she would need to undergo urgent treatment. And came at a terrible time. I don't think a diagnosis like this could come at any good time, but it came at a terrible time. She was just about to open a gym with her partner, Bradley Hill. And of course, all plans have been shelved now. She undergoes chemotherapy. But we wanted to obviously express our thoughts and sort of give our support for Sam, but also to let you guys know that if you want, that you can actually support Sam in her battle against cancer. There is a GoFundMe being set up, and I would highly recommend going to take a look at that, because of course she is lucky, she's fortunate that in the UK there's public healthcare, and won't have to pay a penny for anything to do with her cancer treatment. But of course, she'll be unable to work. There's going to be a ton of extra stress and strain placed upon her and her partner during this time. So
drop the link there in the YouTube chat. Can someone do that?
Yeah, that would be great. But you can also just Google support Samantha Cook to beat lymphoma. But we would highly recommend doing that, because Sam, she's one of the good ones. Whoever has ever met Sam, she's just always smiling. Great vibes to be around. Great jiu-jitsu, great person. And yeah, wish you all the best. Moving on. The last story from our news roundup is about Yuri Simoes. Fought MMA last weekend in Singapore with one championship. This was his second MMA fight and did not go as he was hoping.
Yeah, it was a split decision. I have yet to see the match, but I, from what I understand, from what I read on Yuri's Instagram, he felt that it was supposed to go his way. It didn't, as sometimes happens in mixed martial arts. That sets him back 0-2 at 1, if I'm correct, Hal. Is that right?
0-2, full stop. Yeah. This is not the start anybody was hoping for. And of course, Yuri, I remember him telling me years ago, as far back as prior to winning his first ADCC title in 2015, Yuri told me that it was always his dream to fight mixed martial arts, that he obviously had made a career competing in jiu-jitsu, and he was very successful. He was, I believe, a 4-time IBJJF World No-Gi champion and a 2-time ADCC champion in 2 different divisions as well. And, he was one of our brightest hopes, I feel, to go and compete in MMA, Fantastic wrestling, great submission game, heavy top game. You'd think tailor-made for something like MMA. Mm-hmm. And yet, the thing that stands out to me is the matchmaking going into these 2 matches. It was no easy path into MMA for Yuri. His first opponent had over 10 fights, and his second opponent was undefeated at 7-0. So Yuri, going in to the very earliest stages of his MMA career, his second fight, his 2 opponents had 21 fights combined. That seems to me like questionable matchmaking. It feels like throwing Yuri to the wolves. I feel like, man, a couple of questions here. Why would one championship throw him in against the athletes like that? And number 2, why would a manager accept matches like that? Because you want to get somebody going in their career. You work your way up against tougher and tougher opponents, right? It's like going through video game bosses. You start off against the easier ones, and by the time you're kind of like 10 or 15 levels deep, those guys are the badasses. But man, Yuri was just thrown right in there at the deep end.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? 7-0, undefeated is something that you wouldn't expect more or less a prospect at this point, is what Yuri Simoes could be called for one, and didn't go well for him. I mean, it does point to a strong showing, maybe being some positive for him, saying, hey, I took a guy that's undefeated into deep waters, the deepest he's ever faced. But still, you would think at this point, Yuri would be angling for a mid-level fighter, someone that's not looking at a title shot in their next fight, something like that. I know if I was 0-2, that's what I would be thinking is, okay, I need to get a win, like ASAP. But it's interesting that he's had such challenges. But yeah, the matchmaking definitely has been not in his favor, you could say. No,
and he also said that he was asked to take this fight on basically what is very short notice for a mixed martial arts fight. 5 weeks. 5 weeks is a very, very short notice for a mixed martial arts fight, because, consider that somebody like Yuri would probably have to cut about 35 pounds for the weight limit as well. So all in all, very tough situation. But credit to his toughness and his heart and his obvious skill, because like you said, he was able to take a 7-0 opponent to a split decision and lost somewhat controversially. So let's hope that Yuri can bounce back. But we will see him in action at the ADCC Championships in September, because he is confirmed for the under 99 kilogram division, where he'll be looking for his 3rd gold medal. That's a big deal. So that's it from the Crown of the Grappling News results. The biggest stories in the world right now. let's talk about upcoming events. Tezos, who's number one? Musumeci versus Martinez. We talked about, obviously, Jacob Couch versus Nicky Ryan, Dante Leon versus Mica Galvao. But, Corey, kick us off. We announced 3 prelims matches today, right?
Yeah, so the big announcements today, the 3 free prelims. The headliner of those, Gabriel Souza versus Keith Krikorian. This match, I love this match at 145.
So spicy.
Yeah, two really firecrackers of guys, both submission hungry, and really both of them on a roll right now.
I don't think I've ever seen either guy in a bad match. Both these guys, they love to compete, they love to go forward. They're great entertainers in their own way. I'm very excited for this match. This is going to be I believe, a 145-pound match. Super excited to see Gabriel Souza back, of course. This will be his first Who's Number One match since the Who's Number One Championships in September last year, when he had that incredible upset win by submitting Mikey Musumeci. So Souza is an absolute badass. Love seeing him compete. And Krikorian, this is his long-awaited Who's Number One debut, because we were hoping to get him on the show last year, but just a few things happened, and we finally got him.
Yeah, he's one of the most talented grapplers today, really. 3-time ADCC Trials silver medalist, just right there on the cusp. As well as ADCC veteran, he got the call up and the invite when someone dropped out at 66 in 2019. But yeah, a really dynamic grappler, always going for the sub. Him versus Gabe, as you mentioned, as guaranteed fireworks. And I'm happy to see Keith on the show finally. So
lightweight match. Okay. Yeah, lightweight. 155, I guess, right? So, yeah. Souza representing ZR Team, Krikorian from 10th Planet. That's going to be a lot of fun indeed. And then our other 2 prelims, we've got Luke Griffith of New Wave Jiu-Jitsu versus Joseph Dierkeising, a Nogi World Championship silver medalist, and I want to say an ADCC Trials bronze medalist. Is that correct, Corey? Help me out here. I think so.
Their guy's
bronze medalist,
right?
No, he didn't win Trials. No.
Not Trials. Worlds.
No, silver.
Silver?
Yes, silver. Lost to Devontae in the final.
That's right.
Yeah. But Dierkeising is a pretty badass black belt, and for me, still has one of the very best submissions of 2021 as well.
I was thinking that was, for some reason, I thought that was a final versus track.
Oh, that was the semi-final, yeah. Made it, of course, onto the shortlist for the submission of the year there, 2021, for that beautiful rolling calf slicer that he hit on Vinicius Trattor. And Luke Griffith, I'll be honest, don't know a great deal about him, but he comes highly touted, right, Corey?
Yeah, absolutely. He's representing New Wave, and he's got the backing of John Danaher and Gordon Ryan there. So say no more.
Gordon has said something along the lines of, "This guy is super legit and the future." So definitely keep an eye on him. He's had a recent win at Fight to Win here in Austin a couple weeks ago, and definitely looking to make his mark in the sport. He's from South Africa.
I do believe he is going to be the first South African athlete to compete on Who's Number One. So there's a nice little distinction. And then our final prelim, our final of the 3 prelims. Of course, all 3 prelims will be free to watch on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Is David Garmo returns to take on Benji Silva. Now, Garmo at this stage is a multiple-time veteran of Who's Number One championships. Who's Number One in general. And Benji Silva, though, making his debut. People may not know too much about Benji.
Yeah, representing Kyle Terra. He's a black belt now, right? He got his black belt? Yeah. And so really, really aggressive, right? Both these guys are submission hunters that kind of dive on stuff from anywhere. Benji's got a great kind of leg lock game, foot lock game, and so does David Garmo. So they match up nicely. I think they know that this is about entertainment, right? They really want to go out there and put on a show and kick things off for us in the first match of the night. Garmo has been on WNO enough times to realize that that's like the point of the first match, is to really set the tone for the rest of the evening. And if it's kind of a stinker of a first match, which we've seen, it's tough to get the momentum back, right? It takes more than just one more match. It takes a couple. So hopefully hitting things on a high note to start.
I do not believe it's going to be an issue.
I don't think so either. No, I'm pretty confident.
I got high hopes for this match. I got high hopes for all of the matches on this upcoming Who's Number One event. March 25th, watch FloGrappling's Tezos, Who's Number One, Mikey Musumeci versus Gio Martinez in the main event, and a ton of other great matches on that one as well. What else we got coming up? ADCC West Coast Trials. Oof. The very weekend after Who's Number One, we've got ADCC West Coast Trials, April 2nd and 3rd. What is, we've been told, going to be the largest, the biggest by number of competitors ADCC Trials event in history.
I'm experiencing deja vu, right? They were saying that about the East Coast trials, and it just keeps growing, right? Because you have all the competitors that didn't make the cut from East Coast, not all of them, of course, a great majority coming to the West Coast, plus people that weren't able to attend that first one taking a shot this time around. So yeah, it's going to be huge. I'm very excited to go out there. I missed the East Coast trials. I was covering a different event. I was sad about that. So,
you know, it is a 2-day event, and I was kind of running some numbers on some of these divisions. We've yet to release the actual lineups. You can find them if you know where to look. You can see who's signed up in which division, but the size of these divisions, and in some divisions, it's very possible that people may have to fight 7, possibly even 8 matches to win gold. Those, of course, will be spread over 2 days. And there'll be elimination matches on the first day, maybe 4 matches on the first day, 4 matches on the second, or if you're lucky and you get a bye, 4 on the third, maybe 3 on the first day, 4 on the second. But either way, this is whoever comes out the winner of this is going to be very deserving.
Animal.
Yeah.
Beast.
Super excited for that. Goes down in Las Vegas. The West Coast trials. For me, it feels like actually this is almost going to be like a preview, like a warm-up for the ADCC World Championships in September, which of course will take place in Las Vegas. And it's very different. You know, it's not going to be in a 12,000 capacity arena like the Thomas and Mack Center, but it'll definitely have
just 12,000 competitors.
Just 12,000, yeah. But it'll definitely have a little of the same energy, which I'm looking forward to experience. So, you excited for that, Corey?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just going to be, you know, a bunch of people that many of us have never heard of looking for trials gold, right? This is going to be the cream of the crop, all duking it out, because I don't think anybody can rest on expecting an invitation at this point. It's going to be all of the best grapplers in North America coming out for this one.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It's going to be so good. And then the other really big event, which comes up literally just a few days after the ADCC trials, it'll start on the other side of the United States. In Florida, the IBJJF 2022 Pan Championship will go underway. Now, the Pans, historically, is basically the second most important title, major championship on the IBJJF calendar after Worlds. Winning Pans is a milestone in many grapplers' careers. It's an important tournament for many reasons, but Pans is often something of a preview for the World Championships, but it has its own flavor as well, right?
Yeah, Pans is a lot of fun, and this one feels like we're getting a little bit back to normal on the IBJJF schedule. The timing is very similar to what we've seen in the past, pre-pandemic. Of course, it's moving to Florida, but I think people are getting back into that rhythm because we experienced kind of a weird season last year where we had hit all the majors more or less in 3 months. So that was kind of strange, right? Now we're back on track, and I feel like the geeky season's in full swing. All eyes, I think, are on Tynan Dalpra, right? I don't see his name on the registration list, but you can bet that he'll be going if all things are healthy and correct.
Be surprised if he doesn't. He's going to defend that title because he was obviously the 2021 Pan champion as well as world champion, and started the year off strong already with gold in Euros by all submissions. So he wants to keep that momentum going.
That was something else, man. I mean, there were a lot of great storylines coming out of Euros, but just Tynan is untouchable.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in the Tynan Dalpra era.
I think so, at least when it comes to the gi. So definitely that's a big storyline moving forward there. And yeah, it's going to be a wild couple of weeks, right? WNO, trials, and Pans back to back to back. We've got some things to do, Hal.
Yeah. Put your FloGrappling membership to work. Lots and lots of live jiu-jitsu events coming up over the next couple of weeks. Go to our schedule page on the website to see everything that's coming up because there's all that and much more. We'll see you next week for another episode. Until then, take it easy.
Shocker.